Well, welcome. Thank you all for watching this video. And we've got here today Scott Spaid and Lisa Batchelor. And Scott Spaid, what's your company?
245 Tech.
245 Tech.
Yes.
And 245 Tech is a company that focuses on digital marketing in a lot of different spaces, including the franchise space. Scott,
Right.
And I go back a ways, and Scott,
Yeah.
Scott is one of the preeminent people in the field. So glad to have you here,
Thank
Scott.
you.
And
It's a pleasure.
Lisa, of course, is with the Franchise Innovation Group, and glad to have you here, Lisa.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. So I'll ask the first question for you.
Oh, don't
So-
make it too rough.
I won't make it rough.
Good.
I'll be nice to you.
Thank you.
So you've been in the lead generation business for how many years now?
Well, if you count when I started my first web design company, I guess you could say 25 years.
Wow.
But I think when it really got to be well defined as far as inbound leads go digitally, I'd say more like 15 years. Because the first 10 years were just people had to have a website just because everyone else had one.
Right.
And then strategy started to get into things about, I'd say early to mid 2000s. And at that point we started building tools to measure leads, and one thing has never changed though, search engines. Well, Google is the prime way to get leads, and there's several others. I remember back then it was Alta Vista was the big search engine, and Yahoo, and there's been several of them.
And then we had Ning.
What?
Remember Ning?
I do remember Ning. Yes, yes.
So when we started Stay at Home, our first home care franchise, Google had just come out with advertising. So that was like 2007, 2008. It was amazing
Yeah.
how easy it was. It was so simple, and now you really need a degree to do it.
It's a different ballgame than
Mhm.
it was. I remember doing it, 2008, and I was feeding that maybe $500 a month, and I was getting a lead or two, and they're big ticket items, so you only really need a couple that hopefully convert. But I was really happy with it. I was able to do it on my own. Now you have micro targeting, you have just by zip code, and then there's Facebook where you can get down to live events.
And
things
even
like,
the retargeting is
yes,
amazing.
retargeting is very cool because you can do that and not spend a ton of money.
Mhm.
If they come to your website and then go back out in the wild on the internet, your ads will show up because when they went to your site, it lodged a little pixel or a cookie or something like that, and when they go on other websites out in the Google network, they'll, wow, look at that ad. It was just there. What a coincidence. Kind of thing.
What a coinky dink.
Yeah.
Well, what do you foresee the trend moving towards in light of what we've just been through?
Well, I think you need to sort of carve out the top of the funnel a little bit, and the first thing is attracting good leads. And I don't think that's changing too much from a high level. I think that you are still going to be using services like Google, and I think social media is going to have a bigger impact than it has, and it's going to continue to have a bigger impact. I think LinkedIn is something that shouldn't be forgotten right now in the mix, and it's like Facebook was 10 years ago. It's easy to get traction if you're willing to put in the time and the commitment to help other people with valuable content. You can do it for free, and I'm a convert. I'm amazed at what is happening on LinkedIn for my personal brand, which accompanies me, so there's not much difference there. But I think I really got serious about it a couple weeks before the COVID pandemic hit, and since then I've landed about 5 or 6 leads, and we've converted, I think, 3 of them. So
That's pretty good.
yeah, and I was finally happy to say, yes, I got business through social media.
Uh-huh.
'Cause I've been trying to crack that nut for quite a while. And
Exactly. So how important do you think it is to tell your brand story on like a landing page or a lead page?
I think it's very important, and I think people are looking for a story. They're looking for nostalgia. They're looking for a personality. They're looking for things like, well, here's what they're not looking for. They're not looking for a story of, we bought this franchise because it was the best investment for our return. No, they want to see something like, my dad used to be involved in packaging. He worked at UPS for 30 years. I was on the route with him when I was 10, and now I have my own packaging store helping with UPS, FedEx. You know, those kind of, they want to hear the human part of it, and
Exactly.
you'll hear that more and more, I think.
Yeah, I think, John, how do you like to say that when you're buying a franchise, you're more or less buying into a cult?
You are. You're buying into a cult of the brand. People don't just buy into, very few just buy into an investment opportunity. They want to belong. They want to be a part of something that's bigger and part of something that's bigger than even themselves. That's
Right.
why when we work with brands, we always say you really have to have something in your brand that captures a bigger essence than just selling the product or service.
Yes.
Give back and show a way to give back and incorporate that as part of the brand message. But
Yes.
you're right.
And make it part of the story,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be long. Some restaurants I go to, you read the story on the back of the menu.
Yeah.
I always
Right.
read
Yeah.
that stuff. I think it's
And
cool.
stories, it's the oldest way to communicate is a story.
Yes.
Jesus talked about, and others have talked in parables. And they're nothing more than stories. So at the end of the day, that's what we're wired to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, different here.
So when you're talking about stories, there's two philosophies with putting the price of the franchise on the landing page or not putting the price on the landing page.
Yeah.
What's your philosophy?
I've changed over the years, and it depends on who I'm working with. For me, I don't list pricing. I want to engage, and that might not work all the time and maybe you could, instead of just putting the fee out there, you could say it's in a range, and region's going to make a difference. What kind of space you get, things like that. I'm sure there's many more factors. I'm a don't put that out there guy, but I think you have to give people a clue. And thinking about stuff like that, you could create a private page for, once that person's a little more qualified, you can create a password protected area or a page, resources for that person to help them through their buying decision, and one of those things could be the exact price. Or maybe it's an estimate and then it gets more exact as more resources are put in there.
I think that will help. If they're excited about the brand, they see the story, and they want to give up that email address just to get that price. You're already pre-qualifying them.
And what a great way to get a list going and get someone to at least convert to a suspect, as sometimes folks are called before they're qualified. Yeah, we want to turn them into a prospect, and then into a lead, and then nurture that lead.
Okay, so now that we have the lead, how would you advise franchisors to follow up on those leads?
It's a great question. I think that in this day and age, and for such an emotional big spend, that the franchisor needs to take that lead by the horns and make the phone call. That might be a little bit different process for each franchise or brand. Maybe it happens after the second call, but the sooner that the owner can get in there and bond with that person, because that prospect, lead, wants to know what it's like, wants to speak with someone who's been through it and commiserate. And I think that franchisors should be forthcoming about the pain, and that builds a bond, and I think it builds trust, because most people don't want to. I mean, that's like what social media is. It's all about the good stuff, but no one really wants to talk about the bad stuff being framed up as negative. Well, that's not life. and it's hard work, really hard work
Yeah.
to build a franchise, and you're going to be up. You're going to be working probably 7 days a week for a while, and but you'll have the time of your life, and that's the kind of conversation I think only comes from the franchisor at some point in the process. Or the sooner the better.
Perfect. So if I'm a franchisor and I'm searching for a lead generation firm like yours, what types of questions should I ask and what should I expect?
Well, I think you want to understand how they handle three things well: strategy, execution, and the tools that they use. The strategy, you want to make sure that they fit with how you want to do business. The execution is the most important part, in my opinion. Everyone has great ideas. Executing them, not so much. You've got lots of people who've said, "Oh, I had that invention, but I just didn't do it." Well, that's the difference. Someone got up and did it. So, yeah, you have the strat. I mean, the strategy is really important, but I wouldn't belabor it. I would get it written down, come up with your core values, your mission, your purpose, the big why, and answer those, and then get right into execution, which would be purchasing, in the digital realm, purchasing the right ads and the right platforms, social media, search engines, blogs. You've heard about the mommy blogs. So if you had a franchise that was selling children's clothes, for example, high-end children's boutique clothes, a strategy might be to go and talk to the mommy bloggers in that, around that particular location. So it will take someone actually having to go out and talk to those people. So we just spoke about strategy, done. Now it's time to get our shoe leather burning on the asphalt. And as far as tools go, there's lots and lots of tools out there for measuring, for creating content, to create landing pages, to create the gated content, such as if you want to know the price, give us your email and your name. I've found that the ones that have the most brand awareness are the ones that are too expensive for the smaller businesses.
Yes.
And we have our own thing that we've written called Prospector. It deals with the top of the funnel and measures the traffic. Some people say, well, Google Analytics does that. Well, it doesn't identify the person by name if they fill out the little form with the email address and their name. But there's another tool that we're a reseller for called Keep, which is by Infusionsoft, and it does lead nurturing like nobody's business. I don't even want to attempt to try to recreate programming that. So it has its place. You have other brands like HubSpot will expect to spend $2,000 to $3,000 a month just on the tool.
Yeah, and it's quite expensive if you're a small to medium-sized franchisor.
It really is.
How important do you think it is having the right tool?
I think it's important, very important. I think you have to get over thinking that it has to be one tool. I think it's okay when you're small to have 5 or 6 tools. There's this utopian thought process that most people go through that I want one thing that does it all. Yeah, if you're a multinational corporation, you can get SaaS or some other ERP system that does that. But at the smaller level, it's okay to log into Hootsuite. It's okay to log into Prospector and Keep and log into maybe MailChimp. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And if you don't want to, then you can hire a marketing consultant to aggregate that stuff and give you a report once a month.
Yeah.
What we find is that our clients tend to go from tool to tool to tool, and they just don't. There's no adherence to them.
Yeah.
So they never give them. They're always chasing that panacea, that one tool that will incorporate and encapsulate everything that they want to do.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, the best tool is the tool that you use.
Yes.
And the one that you use is the
it.
one that's easy. And that's the thing from our perspective is you have to use tools because most people don't have the capacity to keep all
Yes.
that information about their prospects, about their discussions with prospects, and be able to follow up, especially if you have a big pipeline. You just can't do it.
Yeah,
So you have to have some sort of tool, and there is no perfect tool out there.
there isn't.
I mean, we have clients, we put them on Zoho. Zoho is a great and affordable, platform. But there are lots of different platforms. There are so many platforms out there that it boggles the mind.
You can get lost.
You
Sure
absolutely get
can.
lost.
I'm a guitar fanatic. I enjoy electric guitar, and there's this guy named Tom Morello. He plays for Rage Against the Machine. And I was watching a rig rundown on YouTube, and he said he got to a point where he just stopped chasing tone. And that's what guitar players love. They're always chasing a certain sound in their head. But he just stopped. And he said, I'm not going to upgrade any of my effects, my amp. This is the guitar I'm going to use. Now I'm going to focus on playing.
Yeah.
I love that. You said
That's
that.
a great-
Probably more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, it's a lot more effective.
Yeah.
You actually get things done. So what makes Prospector a little bit different in terms of being a tool for franchisors?
I think it does a good job to simplify things. People love Google Analytics mainly because it's free. But I don't know many clients that log into the sucker and are able to very quickly tell me how many visits this particular page got during this 2-week period during this promo. You have to hire a Google Analytics person to do that, or spend 30 minutes clicking around. Prospector's 3 easy clicks: web analytics, pages, time span. Type the page in there if it's not in the first 10, and boom, it comes right up. The reports they look simple. It has a CRM aspect to it where if someone converts, it will attach the name to the behavior, and this is where it's really different in that Google's not going to do that. Very few analytics programs, if any, will do that. There's other HubSpot does this. There's plenty of programs that do that. Ours will convert that person into a lead if they come from a form, and then you can type in notes. We tried to keep it simple where you're not working in the tool all the time, but it's a place that other people can go in and look and see what's going on. And it has things like if you send an outgoing email, you'll know if the person on the other end opened it up, because sometimes people will ghost you and you just don't know. And at least if you know they opened the email, you have just that, it'll calm you down a little bit anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, you have some understanding that they're interested. That's the key.
A feature we're
Yeah.
working on that is I think the next big thing is texting. And
Yeah.
Texting is huge.
I've
Yeah.
had prospects where I'll email them, I'll call them, I'll leave a message, I don't hear a thing, and finally I just text them. Immediately, oh yeah, we're still thinking about it. Whoa.
It's true.
We have brands, and our sales team, when they're selling the brands, we haven't typically used text, but last year we started using text in a big way.
Really?
And some of the brands, that's all they do.
Really?
I mean, you cannot connect with people other than text. It's just amazing how that's really taken over. Now, some brands it doesn't resonate with.
Right.
But it's really interesting. CBD branded, that's all people would do.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe with the CBD industry, you're going to see a pretty large percentage of people that their mobile phone is their only way to get to the internet.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I think plays into the texting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's definitely a trend, and eventually it's going to be
Yeah.
one of the absolute key
So
mediums for communication.
I think you're talking about blasting text as
Well, not just
text.
not
That's
just
a tough one to say.
blasting. From our perspective, it's so you've got somebody in the sales cycle,
Okay.
and you're dealing with them in the sales cycle. You can't call them; they won't respond to
Yep.
emails, right? But they will respond to text.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the way that you now communicate with people during that sales cycle. Very very different from previous years.
Yes. The challenge I'm working on solving is bringing texting into the workflow so you could send the text from your desktop using Prospector, and if they text you back, it goes in the CRM, and then you see those in the timeline attached to the person's name. Keep does that, which is really cool, but they only allow you to have one phone number per account.
Yeah.
Because they're after micro businesses 1 through
Okay.
10s.
Yeah.
And we're, in that range, my company, but I want my own number too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
Makes
and
sense.
from our perspective, you've got multiple people on accounts. So if you've got multiple people calling on accounts,
Right.
or in an account, you need to have that capability.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everyone keep their eyes peeled for
Yeah.
that. End of the year probably on that one.
Well, very good. Very good.
So, question, since we're talking about gathering leads. If I'm a franchisor, and maybe small to medium-sized franchisor, how much would I expect my spend to be for digital advertising on a monthly basis?
Well, you have two pieces to the equation. You have the ad spend, and then you have the consultancy/marketing strategy and execution part. I would say to get any traction, you're starting at 3,000, and sweet spot might be 5,000. It's going to depend on the brand, but that's a good range that you can just kind of put out there in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that. We look at, and a lot of people try to do it for less.
Yes.
And when they try to do it for less, then, it's almost not worth even doing.
You can do it for less if you're one location in a town like Knoxville.
Yeah, yeah.
But franchises are all about the brand, and you got to do some branding. You got to get it out there, and that costs a little bit.
Yes.
Now, digital marketing is where you get the most bang for the buck.
Yeah.
Would you rather spend $1,000 on a billboard and not know who looked at it, or would you rather spend that $1,000 on a website with a landing page that is converting people when you get their name and email, and then you know exactly how many people have visited, converted, and then gone into the funnel for the account executive or hopefully the owner making that phone call?
Cool. Well, my last question, I always love to ask this question. What's your number one challenge as a lead generation firm?
It sounds trite, but just getting the leads. It's hard work. I know. And setting expectations with clients. I think when you're talking about a big ticket sale, it doesn't take that many leads to make something happen. So you might have a landing page that gets, let's say it gets 25 leads a month. If you're thinking it's going to get 100, well, maybe not. But part of that process is figuring out how many of those 25 leads convert into the next stage in your sales funnel, and understanding your closing rate. And those are things that are in Prospector as well, as far as the deal tracking. When you guys were customers, I don't think, or not you guys, but your customers, the franchisors who've had it in the past, I don't think it had the deals module in it.
I don't think it did.
Yeah.
No.
So that's been a nice addition, where you can you can customize the pipeline and name it each stage whatever. You can have as many as 15 stages, and you can see how long each one's in each stage, and figure out how long your sales cycle is, because it puts it on the dashboard, and it's just doing basic math.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah, I'll have to show it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Scott, it's really been a pleasure having you today. We really do appreciate it.
Thank
Your
you.
insights in the marketplace are second to none. So
Thank
really
you.
do appreciate it. Lisa, thank you very much for emceeing this. I was sort of just watching it happen in between. So really do appreciate it. If you want more information about Scott and his company, look at 245tech.com.
Correct. I love this. This is what I do for a living, and I'm passionate about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. On behalf of the Franchise Innovation Group, we really appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Thanks.